Hello. Hi. I can't believe it. You are back from holiday. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Anwen Aspden and David Aspden, but I know them as Ans and Dave from Stable. And Stable are Microsoft Gold partners, and they've been around. I did say they're a power couple, and I mean it. Yes, they have been working together for 22 years now on Stable. So Anwen and Dave, welcome.
Hiya.
Hi,
Good
Bernie.
afternoon.
Awesome. Listen, so guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to be talking. I'm seeing this thing coming up again. This is the second time I've had my live that said it's not live. But it is live, so I'm not even going to pay attention to LinkedIn. Sometimes it gets it wrong. Yes, of course it's live. Yes. Okay. So, yes, that's what happens when you have live. Right. So, the two reasons that you are here are, one, you are committed to diversity, equality, and inclusion, and you're committed to making that a part of your everyday work life. And two, you have committed to the Master in Diversity Conference to the extent of being the zone sponsors for the Digital Inclusion Zone, right? So those are the two hats that you're wearing.
Yep.
And Anwen is also going to be one of my speakers on the afternoon on the main stage, because she has a lot of reasons to be very, very passionate about diversity and inclusion. And you know what, as well, guys? She has actually brought to this table something that is so important, and that is understanding it's not just about black and white. It's not just about disabled. It's not just about, sexual orientation and all the things that people readily recognize. But what about the adopted? What about those who are socially excluded? What about that? And so Anne's is adopted, and has for many years supported Adoption UK because she had her own journey, unsupported, unrecognized, one of the hidden exclusions. So we're going to be highlighting that. So Anne, first of all, could you just start as ladies first, Dave? So answer, share your heart as to why you've committed to this and your journey.
Well, I remember when we first met, actually, Bernie. That's where I'm going to start a little bit.
Yes.
So, well, I think this was a few months ago, wasn't it? When we were in this very room, because we'd met at an event at the House of Lords, and then we came here, and we sat around this table. And there wasn't really an agenda as such at the time. It was purely a free-flowing conversation, meeting of minds. And then that's the moment really where I kind of shared my personal story with you in terms of my background. And I think sometimes the complexities around adoption as well, and how I've been working with Adoption UK and I've been very proud to do so over the last 8 years. So I think in terms of our presence, I'm really looking forward to the event next week, and it's coming around quicker than I thought.
Yes.
But it's really exciting on two levels. So I'm coming with two hats really. As you say, in the afternoon, it's about sharing my experience of working with the brilliant Adoption UK in a voluntary capacity, and spotlighting some themes there that maybe are unaware of around identity, around language, about the story of change behind that as well. But also, we're really excited to be there. And as you say, sponsoring the digital I'll get my teeth in, digital with Microsoft. And there's a lot of exciting activity, actually, we've got there that we're planning to.
Awesome. So, David, tell us. I know people are going to say, well, you're talking about diversity and inclusion. What have you done? You've asked the lady about herself, and you're going to ask the man about the business. Tell us about the business part of your journey so far, And in fact, I'm going to let you both just share that. But David, if you will start, and in particular about the stable and its work with Microsoft in a bit more detail, and how it took you to the conference.
Yeah, certainly. So for anybody who doesn't know much about Stable, which probably up until about 3 years ago would have been most people, because we deliberately kept quite under the radar. It's a company that was formed in 2001. It's a tech company at its heart, I guess, but more of that in a second. We're based in Wales, in Cardiff. I moved to Cardiff when I was 19 as a student. We are originally a family business, and it was pretty much a one-man band in the early days. And Anne's came and joined the company in 2015. By that point, we'd already established ourselves as a Microsoft Gold partner, providing and delivering Microsoft solutions. And we're also a Microsoft supplier. In those days, in 2015, we had a small number of consultants that were working, operating through Stable, delivering services to the Microsoft consultancy services was. And then when Anne's joined in 2015, let's just say, if you leave it to the professionals, things can improve. We're now the UK #1 supplier of freelance resources into Microsoft. We have an amazing, what we call trusted network, which is basically hundreds of people like myself who've been working with Microsoft technologies for probably too many years, and are now honing their skills in things like Microsoft 365, Azure, and basically any technologies that Microsoft are currently developing. So the company, I say it's a tech company, but I think recently when we started to look at how we articulate what it is we do, we realized that actually, whilst we are a tech company, at its core, Stable is all about people.
Yeah.
Because effectively, we're working with businesses, some small, some large, organizations, public sector, that have problems that need solving. One of the reasons why we've gone through this rapid period of growth for the last couple of years is due to largely the pandemic, because organizations realized they had to do a lot of work to their IT systems to support remote, flexible, hybrid working. And that's what we're quite good at. We're good at basically migrating and helping organizations adopt cloud technologies. And cloud obviously is at the heart of that hybrid story. So when we working with the businesses, however, it quickly turns from a conversation around technology into a conversation around people, because it's the relationship that people have with technology, and technology being an enabler to get them to do things. And I think it's that segue in terms of what technology does that has really helped us in terms of our support for the diversity, equality, and inclusion event in Cardiff this year, because technology can be an enabler in all sorts of different ways. And obviously things like assistive technology for people who have got accessibility issues, maybe that's partially sighted, or they need screen readers, or somebody who lacks mobility can use and operate IT systems now in all manner of different ways that we're hoping to be able to demonstrate. And Microsoft, together with some of the other big tech companies like Apple, etc., are working together and introducing things like artificial intelligence to layer on top of that in some really innovative ways that are really genuine in helping not just people who have disabilities, but this approach around inclusive design, which Microsoft adopted in 2016, was basically to say, look, if you make technology accessible for those people that need it to be accessible, it will also become accessible to people who are temporarily requiring accessibility. So you're carrying a child and you have to operate your phone with another hand, or you're having a problem with vision at that time because you've got particularly bad sunlight, and there's different ways that you can access the technology. So for us, as a technology company, we see this event really quite pivotal in terms of, I don't think there's been an event like it as far as I'm aware recently.
No.
So when you came to us with this idea, we just leapt on.
That was just exciting. Guys, I met Anne's at the House of Lords. A dear mutual friend of ours, Tina Owen. Shout out to Tina from Microsoft. I am eternally grateful to Tina for introducing Anwen to me. She said, Bernie, when I told her about my event at the House of Lords, she said, this lady, you've got to meet her. She's incredible. Do you have any invitations left, because the event is invitation only, and that was like very last minute, wasn't it? And I remember I messaged you and said, gosh, I don't know, it's at full, but let's not give up, somebody might drop out. And that's exactly what happened, wasn't it? So I could give you that thought. And then we just clicked and we met up at your offices, and we met up to talk about supporting is it women in, what's the terminology of the campaign? Digi girls. Is it?
That's right.
Yes, Digi girls.
That's a really good example, actually. And you're right. So we were really proud of this. In April, we worked with Microsoft, our colleagues in Microsoft, and we were the first to deliver so ultimately this is about inspiring a younger generation.
Yes.
And particularly girls as well, to pursue a career in technology.
Yes.
So we worked with Microsoft and hosted the first DigiGirls event here, actually, in the office downstairs. It was wonderful. We got a whole room of really enthusiastic, I think, how old, 15, 16-year-olds, but they were just so full of imagination, so full of ideas. And then so much so, about a month later, we hosted a Microsoft event again, learning event, but around VR.
Yes.
And this time it was mixed. And actually, the girls that came to the DigiGirls were so inspired, they came back for that one as well. But it's brilliant, because this is exactly what we want to work in partnership.
Yeah,
to really
didn't you say at the time that one of the girls wanted to, there was an issue because one of the girls wanted to change their choices for the subject choices for school. It was just incredible, and that's how we started talking. And I said to you, I'm just about to launch this event. And I only had one other person that I had told about, and I said, "Would you guys help?" And you were like, "Yes," and that was it. And we've had several meetings. We've bounced so many ideas of, haven't we? And it's
lovely lunches.
And here we are. Yes. And it's just incredible, because what started out as a conversation about little girls in tech, has now mushroomed into such a greater reach for all of us. Yes. And and you're staying true to the mission in sponsoring the digital inclusion zone, and you are bringing your incredible partners. I know Microsoft is going to be in there, so tell us about what the zone is going to be comprised of, and what people should expect. Let me spotlight you. Right.
So I can start. So we'd have 3 corners, one of which was about women in business. This is building on what we're touching on now in terms of digital, but also, we did start looking at, women in technology, and then internally, as we started to kind of look at the different themes that we were discussing, this is more broad than that. I've had a career before I joined Stable formally in 2015. I worked at the BBC for 26 years, and that's a long time. So in that time, I saw differences in terms of, how differences are between women and men in the workplace, in ways of working. And there are strengths, and there are also kind of areas of learning. And I think, these are subjects in some respects that, we don't shy away from. We look at, we're a people-centric company, and as Dave was saying earlier, it's very much about representing our trusted network. And really what we recognize is that sometimes the roles that are coming out from our partners, there's not that many women that have necessarily the skills as yet. We're seeing more coming through, which is really important. And that's what we want to touch on in that corner, really, is about recognizing, and celebrating where things are working really well, and how do we proactively,
That's it. That's the women in that's the tech corner.
So I think there's a bit in there as well. I mean, we are slightly biased because we've got 5 children and 4 of those are girls. And 3 out of the 4 daughters currently work with Stable.
Wow. That's good parenting there. Somewhere in there, guys, is good parenting. You need to take some notes from these guys.
They do.
Yeah. And going back to that point we made earlier about when you're looking at adoption of technology, it's not always about the technical bits, it's the human bit. So for me, it's that multidisciplined approach to technical enablement with an organization which needs a blend of skills. Some of them will be deep dive technical skills, and to me, there's no reason that I can think of why that shouldn't be an even playing field across any and all people, really. It tends not to be, because we find, because we work in this area of the industry, that it does tend to be more blokes than women. And I've always tried to work out why that is. It's either because women feel that they're kind of being, I don't know. I remember when I was learning IT at what was O level, showing my age now. But the school computer was a precious resource, and it was held in the computer room. To get to it, you had to sort of sacrifice a lunch break. And for some reason, because it's contended, it introduces that element of competition. And maybe it's just that blokes tended to be a bit more competitive, that they got to the computer. And therefore, maybe that's what it was.
I also think it has to do with how we are actually marketing tech and IT. But before we move on to that, I would just like to highlight question from Haley Dunn. Haley's a coordinator of our conference. Fantastic, Haley Dunn. Haley was head of delivery at Cardiff for 22 years. And now Haley is launching into her own stuff, and she's giving me time to finalize this conference. Wow. So Haley is asking this question. She says, women in tech, so important. And she's asking you, have you connected with Tech, who are running a New Futures project, which is all about women in tech, and do lots and lots around girls in non-traditional roles? Have you, guys?
Well, this is where, not as yet, but genuinely what I'm really excited about with this event is everything about Stable is about partnership. Stable is actually 21 years old. We're not a new company.
Exactly.
We've been 21 years. However, in the areas that we work, we deliberately really haven't been marketing ourselves, because it's something that we haven't ever done because of the nature of our work. However, we moved into our offices 3 years late, because we were supposed to be in 2018, but it doesn't matter. We're here now. But by being in our office now, and it's coming up to a year since we've moved in, what this presence is doing is meaning that we're really meeting with brilliant organizations locally. Brilliant, conversations are happening, which then, exactly like moments like this, like this event, it just means we're getting more introductions, we're having more meaningful conversations. So whilst we haven't met Tech yet,
you will meet them on the day, because they've sponsored the diversity, the gender equality zone. And they were right off the bat to support this. They have supported anything to do with diversity and inclusion in general over the years, but their main focus is gender equality, and they do that very, very well. And that's the whole thing. Spot on what you said. And this conference is not about me. I might have had the idea, and I might have been the one that brought us all together, and I've platformed the mission. but it's about everybody getting together. We go together or not at all. That's a reality. And you know, how long has it taken for me to do it? 19 minutes. The book. I take
Yeah.
usually plug it in the first 5. But no, that's what this book. The book was written, and it actually sets out the passion that I have for diversity and inclusion and how I see it and how the people within Wales are actually executing it. And I think Wales is acquitting itself wonderfully in this whole agenda. And there is so much more to be done. I've been having some incredible conversations from as high as the Welsh government all the way down to grassroots, charities and solopreneurs. It now is the time. There is this awakening that has happened, and people just I'm just thrilled to see this, because I feel there's another partnership coming up, many more partnerships, because that's how we're going to do it. The task force is going to just help to mobilize that. What did Haley say here? Haley says here, yes, she will put you in touch with Beth and Baldwin, who's running the tech.
No,
There we
Haley.
go. That's what I'm on about. That's what I mean. Fabulous. Awesome. So now, so we were talking about the zone. So you have one section now with women in business. So you have 2 others. Tell us about the other 2 corners that you have.
So do you want to say about the AI and also the?
So one is AI, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, from the perspective of tech, I mentioned earlier about the assistive technologies that are available, are continually being evolved as well. So we're hoping to, alongside with Microsoft, showcase some of the sort of state-of-the-art gear, technology, and cloud services that
Chris is coming along, isn't he?
Yeah, we've got a consultant who's a Microsoft consultant.
So people will be able to actually see things. There'll be demos.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of innovation happening in this area. So it's continually evolving. But we're going to have some stuff that we can do some live demonstrations on.
Wow.
And also, I think we are, through our network, we're capturing real live sort of stories and experiences of how people are using this technology on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
And those stories are really, I think, quite poignant in the sense that, without the technology, some of these individuals would have been severely impacted not to be able to continue their current job. They've had to change jobs, but now the technology allows them to carry on in much the same way that things like Teams and Zoom have allowed us to carry on working through a global pandemic. So this sort of bit around the tech is going to be quite a key area. I think that's probably the area I'll be sort of like schmoozing around and hopefully meet some people and get a feel for how they think it looks and feels.
I wanted to ask you, David. I've heard some comments. Somebody, and I read an article recently about in the whole diversity and AI, and there was this concern that the people that create the AI apparatus, they are the ones who would program these various bits of equipment, software, whatever, to do what they needed to do. And there's now this talk about AI color, having color in color AI. So in other words, that necessity to have people of color or people of different protected characteristics. But this one was in particular about color, and I found the concept very curious. Like, how do you program AI to take into consideration color? Do you have any comments on that? Sorry, I might be throwing. And if you want to say, and I won't pick that ball up, Brenda, that's fine. I just remembered it when you talked about this just now.
So I'm not an AI expert by any means. There's a lot of people that know an awful lot more about it than I do.
Yeah.
But these large language modules, these sort of the ChatGPT, and before it, Google were working on a lot of sort of cognitive services where they were taking imagery and then translating that into what it thinks that it can see, etc. A lot of the big organizations, they put a lot of research and development into making sure that, that the technology is fair. I think,
Yeah.
When you look at the themes around diversity, inclusion, it's
Yeah.
around fairly kind of representing
Exactly.
the whole of it.
That's it in its simple form.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And that, the problem is that any technology, because it's,
Mm.
as you said, it's ultimately built by humans, and even if
Yeah.
you're using machine learning algorithms, ultimately those algorithms are built by humans. So
Yes.
there's always going to be, I think, that risk of bias, whether that's
Mm.
conscious or unconscious bias
Yes.
that works its way into the algorithms in
Yeah.
some way. I think my understanding, as limited as it is, around things like these large AI platforms now, is that it is continually learning.
Mm.
I think somebody in Microsoft might have made a good analogy to you, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Almost kind of. I think there's a perception sometimes that AI, and again, I'm no expert at all, but I love
Yeah.
speaking to people who that's how I learn. But
Yes.
he basically, I think he's mentioning about, it was at the digital events here. There's a perception, I think, more broadly that perhaps
Mm.
it's far more advanced, for example, ChatGPT, than it actually is. And,
Yes.
the analogy is, think of it as a toddler. Which, this isn't a fully fledged, piece of technology. It's evolving, and then there's a lot of, if you're looking at it at its, it's in its infancy, and it's learned behaviour through the way that it's interacted with, then I think that is a good way of looking at it, because
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is a toddler, and not only that, what those of us who are learning about it are some of us are just only engaging. I am not embarrassed to say that the first time I heard about GPT was when I met both of you. Remember,
yeah,
it was about the second meeting or so that this thing came, and I was like, "What is this? Chat GP what?"
yeah.
So people are still discovering it, let alone being able to use it in its right way and understand it. It's an incredible the times that we are in now, and that is why, and all the zones are important, but I think the tech zone, because that is where, as you say, there can be unconscious bias within that. There are so many things. The tech zone, technology drives everything. Because that's where we put our thoughts. That's where we capture all the things we want to do. So it's really, really fascinating that you are going to be there and they're representing at such a high level and exposing people to it. But then you are also interacting with other people with another sectors and other who can, so you I just think it is just such an opportunity for us to come up with some really rich pieces of work. So just to go back, so we're going to have some demos and so on, and then what else within the zone?
So I think there's, Chris, as David's mentioned, in terms of actually the demoing, about what tools, because what fascinates me is that we all are familiar with the internet, right? We're all familiar with kind of browsing things, but I was shown even 3-4 months ago about the way of actually just within the browser, there's like a little tool that you can switch on and it changes the language. But not only
Yes.
that, if you're changing the language in Welsh, you can change the dialect of it as well. So it's not just machine led. I haven't
Wow.
looked at that piece of work. So that's just one small thing, but the amount of functionality that I guess we want to
Wow.
surface and spotlight is maybe people don't realize what's not there. And I
Yeah.
think that's the whole point of,
Yeah.
giving these real demonstrations
Yeah.
and learning really of what's capable, but you just not necessarily know that it exists,
Yeah.
access to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because and you know what, you tech just supports everything, as you said about all the various assisted features that people who need assistance rely on, and translations, the people who are visually or whatever they're audiologically impaired,
Yeah.
all of that is something that people rely on you, Microsoft, and those other developers to support and help them with, and also to make it more accessible to them. So, you do have a very, very important job.
Yeah, I think the other thing that always, excites me, as well as having 5 children, 4 of which being daughters, we do also have 4 grandchildren, 3 of which being girls.
Girl.
I would do a little bit of imagineering in terms of
Yes.
what would the education, what does the future look like in 10 years' time? Because there is that statistic that I think 80% of roads, I think by 2030, haven't necessarily been invented yet, and in terms of tech. But then,
oh gosh, yes.
yeah, I think there's another side as well in terms of how can tech truly be an enabler, and perhaps tap into hidden talent that right now don't have that pathway of going into traditional employment potentially.
Yeah, and it does hark back to what we talked about a bit earlier on, Dave, when we were saying, you were kind of trying to unpack why is it that there's so many more men compared to women in tech, and we were looking at whether or not it's that men are more competitive, so to speak. I think us women are pretty competitive. I think it could be a bit more of does it appear attractive enough to a woman? Do we actually understand the benefits that there are? And in terms of attractive, not just only the money or this because the money is good, but maybe the environment, the working environment. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think partly because it's seen as a science, IT, and I don't think in all cases, certainly from my experience, it is necessarily that technical or that scientific.
No.
If you do a degree in computer science, there'll be a mathematics bit to it, and that can put people off. But I know people that have had a very, very lucrative and strong career in IT for many, many years, who probably haven't even got GCSE maths.
Yes.
I also know that typical barriers that might impair you from progressing in certain careers, like if you're dyslexic, getting a job in law can be difficult. But in IT, a lot of, in fact, people with neurodiversity can often find IT an excellent place to excel.
Wow. But I don't think that people actually say that. Does that information actually go? Oh, there is that. Where's the messaging in that? Where do we see that? And I think it has to do with how we are presenting it.
Yeah. So often, people who are performing at a very high level, from a sort of a functional perspective, will be very good analysts, data coders, and to try and open up those career pathways for people. That to me is about almost like advertising. It's something like, did you know that these career opportunities are available to you? And you never know what you're good at until you try it. And the problem is if you don't try it because you never give the opportunity.
Yeah, we've got to get that. We've got to be a bit more bullish, I think, if we really want to open up the market. If we want to keep it to ourselves, then we just keep it as the next best secret. But if we really want to change and we really want to be a part of this new movement, because let me tell you, women are scientific in their minds and very technical, and we are great problem solvers. I don't think men have the monopoly on that. Thank you very much.
I think just to share a little bit of how I got into, whilst I'm not
yes.
Because
your background, start first with your background so people understand how far removed your background was from what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, it just might be helpful because I think in terms of, each of our lived experiences, they're all different. But I think sharing our kind of stories may help to inspire, others to think in slightly different ways. But the way I kind of fell into, and I say fell into, I used to love gaming. I don't have time as much now, but I used to really love gaming. I don't know why I don't have that much time, but I don't. But I can remember when I first started, and I'm going to show my age here, I was just short of 18 when I started in the BBC. I was just a little while ago. But really at that point, I was there as a PA, as a secretary, because that I'd gone to a business school for a small while to learn how to be a secretary. And that's what Mum wanted me to be. So that's I joined the general office pool, but actually it was a brilliant way of learning and progressing my career, because I got to work in lots of different departments. At that time, Bernie, there were no computers.
I know. I remember those days as well. Mm-hmm.
But I did manage to kind of do a radio program with a 1/4-inch tape razor blade. But anyhow, at some point, shortly after I met Dave, and that's where really I kind of reignited, really just looking at the gaming element, but looking more beyond that in terms of early web browsers and searching for things as well. And then I went into work one day and pitched this idea. Crazily, I think there were only 2 or 3 of us that, maybe this was before the days the BBC even had a World Wide Web presence.
Yes.
That's something we should go down. And then soon after, there was a very small group of us that kind of developed what's the, web presence in Wales.
Yes.
And that was great. And then from there, I again pitched this crazy idea about doing a live chat, which kind of started something locally with presenters and the audience. And then that just grew.
Oh, wow.
And then obviously
you're a woman ahead of your time.
Well, I like to think, but again, it's imagination. And the team I worked with, and the team collectively, we were doing some really innovative, brilliant thing. And the only reason that happened was because of the discipline and the fusion of disciplines of IT, of UX designers, of the editorial team. And you bring all these different skill sets around the table. And all of a sudden, we're doing brilliant things. And we're introduced to people. Remember, there was one project that we worked with in NASA, and it was a space archaeology. But again, it's just kind of putting your name out there and just taking risks and taking silly ideas sometimes, but they do come to fruition. And I think that's what's great for me now. What we're seeing with the potential for making meaningful change in Stable, it's again through having conversations, partnering up with brilliant organizations as well, and meeting new people as well.
Exactly, absolutely. No, I remember earlier on when we were talking, David, you mentioned about serving companies, the challenges that they have. As I just thought, maybe if you could share with us some of the challenges you found over the years, both of you, that companies face, and how you've helped them, for 2 reasons. One, so we can actually know more about what you do and what you can do to support after us, but also so people will understand that they are not alone in challenges that they face. They're more commonplace than they think, and they are maybe a lot more simple to solve than they would anticipate. So would you mind sharing, just talk about the challenges that you've seen? You've 21 years, you've seen some challenges that companies have had.
Yeah. So I think if we take the challenges that came about in the early stages of the pandemic, what we were finding then was organizations had to quickly adapt their IT to allow people to work from home. And even then, if your job is working, say, at the BBC as a video editor, just working from home isn't necessarily going to be that simple, because the machine that you need to do your video editing is a specific purpose-built machine that sits in an office somewhere, somewhere else, and to access that machine requires quite a bit of changes to the infrastructure to allow that to work. So what we were finding is organisations were having to adapt the IT infrastructure to be able to support remote working at pace, whilst also hopefully not opening themselves up to security vulnerabilities, because obviously a lot of organisations, particularly if you're dealing with sensitive data, are very concerned about cyber security.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where we became quite useful to organisations who are going through that transformation. Our background is working with large-scale government, defence, national security. We understand the good practices that are required for cyber security and against National Cyber Security Centre advice and recommendation. But we're also able to apply some of those templates and those models at a smaller level to support
Yes.
organisations as well.
Yeah.
So in amongst all of that and the techie stuff that needed to be done, what we also found was that the organisation had to adapt its policies, its people, its processes to adjust to the new way of working. So when we remodeled Stable in 2021-22, it came from a company that was all about providing people to organisations like Microsoft, to now a company that was providing people, solutions, and then the important third ingredient was learning.
Yes.
So that learning component
Awesome.
is providing organisations with the skills
Yeah.
necessary to basically support and manage this change that was happening and being imposed upon them largely in all sorts of different ways according to what it is that you did. Interestingly, a lot of the things that have come out of the pandemic have now stuck.
Yeah.
So if you invested a lot in hybrid working, it meant that you didn't necessarily need that expensive office anymore.
I know, but you know what has happened though, David, is I know of some places that are stuck with the office.
Yes.
And
yeah, there's a lot of real estate in London that we went and visited that must be costing somebody a fortune. Was largely unused. But then conversely, as we've now got to that position where we can return back to work into an office environment, I think people are quite enjoying the ability to be able to do both.
Yes.
You can work in the office, and that's why we've invested heavily in terms of making the office feel like home. Because
yes, guys, those offices are like, and don't all go charging down there now, right? But those offices are they're amazing. Okay. They're fantastic. There's a table in the boardroom that, you know, if it goes missing, you guys know where it is. Okay. It's incredible. Yeah, but pardon?
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. No, it's incredible. And then the other thing as well, as you're talking about offices and people going back, have you seen then challenges in these with these organizations with terms of mental health? You know, people sitting at the laptop. How do you, but not just laptop tech, you know, just getting immersed in tech. Talk to us about that, guys.
So I think we as a company are in a really privileged position in some respects because our work is around sort of professional services. So we don't have any products that we're dealing with in terms of stock. We don't have hours of business in a typical 9 to 5 sort of way. So we've been able to be very, very innovative in terms of how we've done work and return to work within Stable, really afforded by the fact that we work within that sort of professional services industry. So our approach has been to basically to look at how we can kind of reimagine the place of work based around not where you're doing the work, not when you're doing the work. It's not even necessarily how you're doing the work. It's about having a common set of objectives, which we use OKRs to monitor and manage our objectives, and then we have these sort of shared sessions with the team The team have got objectives. The individuals in the team have got their own objectives, and then it's down to them how they fulfil those objectives.
Yeah. So the way, and it is taking time, and we're deliberately handcrafting the way that Stable's growing. But as an organisation, we really are working on a team of teams methodology.
Yes.
What that means is that we're fostering a spirit of collaboration and communication.
Yes.
And I've got a mantra here with that every individual shapes Stable's growth. It doesn't matter if you're coming in at apprentice level. It doesn't matter if you've got just a few more years under your belt. The fact is, we listen to each other, and it's about empowering individuals then to feel that it's throughout your team. If there's something that because when you're innovating, sometimes things are going to go wrong.
Yes.
The important thing is to feel that you're in a safe environment, that you can share that with your team, and we work together then to resolve it and build on it. And it's that continual improvement and growth mindset that I think, it makes us, I think, quite unique as well, is having that.
Yes, I certainly see that. It is evident and immediately apparent when you go to your offices that that's the kind of culture you have. And I'm always seeing your partners there, and they all look happy. And there's just such a fantastic vibe, guys. They're great people to get to know and to work with. They know their stuff. But as David said earlier, it's these policies, people, and purpose. That's their thing. And the importance of collaboration, as Anne said. But Anne, I want to just kind of come right back full circle to where I started with you and adoption. Tell us, are you able to just share a little bit about that personal journey with us?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth mentioning that I'm very proud of the fact that I'm adopted, and I've always known it's not been a secret at all. I was always kind of known from day one that I was adopted, and all I kind of remember slightly through my teenage years, I didn't necessarily fit in with school. I moved to primary schools twice. I moved to comprehensive schools twice. But what I do remember is that there were certain complexities that I struggled with. So whilst and I have got the most wonderful, loving family and grew up so lucky in some respects, it felt a little bit difficult, I think.
Did your peers know you were adopted, or did you keep that as a secret?
No, it's not something I really mentioned in school. I think at that time there was more of a stigma attached. And I think, in that respect, what I do remember was when I was searching for my birth family, and it took 10, 12 years. But what I do remember was that I found a peer support group. And that would have been 20 years ago now, maybe more than that, called After Adoption. And when I went there, it was the first time actually that I felt completely understood in terms of some of the themes, because there are recurring themes that, around identity in particular, that are quite complicated, and it cuts across a number of levels. But actually, that was when, I think it's nearly 8 years ago, that I reached out and started volunteering with Adoption UK, because that helped me massively at the time. And then following that, Adoption UK Wales, I was really proud to say that I hosted a group for adult adoptees for 3-4 years. It started here, and then that was online. And what you start to realise is that there are recurring themes that we struggle with in some respects, and I think it's misunderstood. So that's where I've always found it really important to kind of, especially when you're looking at the younger generation, if there's ways of sharing lived experiences to mean that by doing so you help a younger generation avoid some of the difficulties and complexities, then we should do so. And it's through working and meeting brilliant, inspiring people that I have over many years, and continue to do so, that I just have always found it, whilst it's not always an easy subject, for all the right reasons, it's something that I think we can only grow by sharing some some areas that aren't easy to share. And then that's where I think what Adoption UK, they're going to be there, by the way, next week, aren't they? And
Yes, yes, they are. They are.
brilliant. And
Yes,
there's a fantastic initiative they're starting to kind of look at now in terms of why employers should
yes,
also have an awareness, because language matters.
yes,
Things like application forms. Some people
yes.
don't have access to their birth certificates even today, and
Wow.
these things aren't necessarily known of. So I think spotlighting awareness can
I
only.
didn't know that, you see. And we've talked, but we haven't gone into that aspect of it. I didn't know that. And that's the very reason that it's so important, that you take that space outside of the tech the digital inclusion zone, to highlight that, because you are a perfect example, and of what we're talking about, that you see people and you have no idea about their real story, the challenges that they have, the hidden ways they feel excluded. Sometimes it's self-imposed, because like you said, you didn't share what was happening when you were growing up. So
I
you
think
were, yeah, go on.
society at the time, things change, right? I mean, I was saying there's a lot of improvement. There's so much more improvement now than there was back in 20, 30 years ago. But
Yes,
even so, I think back then there was certain stigma attached,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it's recognizing
Hmm.
that to me it's about breaking those boundaries down, and you do
Exactly.
that through talking, and it's just to help raise awareness and make things better
Yeah.
for the next generation.
And the reason that there is not that much of a stigma nowadays than then is that we've been talking more about it. We've been getting to meet the real adoptees, and we've been seeing that there's nothing, they don't have two heads, and they have something to contribute to society, and so that just takes us full circle back to this mission. We have to keep raising the awareness about diversity and inclusion and all the many, very many aspects of it. Because until we do that over and over and over again, and get more people coming out from wherever you are, and showing that there are no two faces, they don't have two heads, the black people don't have two heads, the people of the sexual orientation don't have two, all the very many protected characteristics, and apart from that, they don't have two heads. God, don't they have a lot to bring to the table? Look at you and your powerful husband and what you're doing, you know and that's the kind that you actually epitomize the message of that conference. And that's why when I met you that day, we're talking about the Digi Girls, I was like, there's more here. You gotta come on this ride. And you didn't think twice
No,
to join, and you've been supporting with such incredible advice, food, and
always.
and you come right back from holidays. It's their first day back from halls, guys, and here they are, and they'll be there next week. You can see on this scrolling banner how to get in touch with them. Info at stable. It's not coming up yet, but it's info at, tell us the email address, please.
Just info@stable.co.uk.
There you go. It's easy to remember, even though I didn't. Right, and we're in our last 5 minutes now, guys, and I always ask my guests at this time to just share something, remind us of something that you don't want us to forget, that you've already said. If you've already said it, you want to say, listen, whatever I've said to you today, if you forget anything, don't forget this. Or if there's something new you wanted to just tell us before we go, over to you both. I'll spotlight you both. Right.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess it's as Anne said, everyone's sort of personal experiences are unique, and I think what this conference is all about is for people to be sharing those experiences and try to break down those barriers around entry into all sorts of different worlds. In our case, it's the world of tech. That happens to be just the turn that I took when I was a teenager. I just happened to be good at something, and that thing happened to be computers. So it was lucky for me. And I kind of joined in that world at just about the right time when computers were working their way into people's jobs and cash points on the street, and people were using game technology at home, although in those days much less sophisticated than the ones now. Ping pong.
You still have to do it.
Yeah, but I think my takeaway from that in terms of my story is that, you know, I'm the first Aspden in my family tree that went to university. And I think the opportunities now for younger people to go into higher education are much better. But then what after that? You know, if you're going into the university to forge a career in a particular area, how can businesses like Stable be supporting young people in terms of that journey, and in particular relevance to getting meaningful work out once they finish the degrees, which is why as a company we're really trying to sort of level up skills within South Wales, particularly around these areas of cyber and cloud, I think we're particularly proud about that. We're kind of leading by example.
Yeah, and working with brilliant partners. That is that strong partnership ethos to enable that, really. But yeah, I echo everything that Dave's saying. I think there is an opportunity via technology to make some brilliant, meaningful change. I think that's something that, you know, you can't do that in isolation. That's something that does rely on, you know, partnership and working collaboratively.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'd kind of, to end on, I guess, a little bit, is that, you know, we're at a time where, you know, as we're, you know, certainly with Stable, we're growing quickly, but I think by doing so, what I would kind of carry on, I do it personally, is asking why. If something's being introduced, if something's changing, if it's something that feels a little bit uncertain, then just keep asking, you know, why are we doing this? Go back to that kind of root of why.
Ask the question and focus on things outside of yourself. We're coming to the last minute now, and guys, when we started and I said we have an hour, I saw on David's face a look that said an hour. We're gonna talk for an hour. he politely still stayed in the in the studio, but yes, we talked for an hour. Oh my gosh, yes. So what I just like to do, I just like to bring us back full circle to the reason for the conference, and the reason for the conference is in this book, and I just want to share, you know, what, as I shared in my dedication of the book, I'm going to read to you so you understand what this is about. Get the book, but most importantly, come to the conference and be a part of this, okay? Because I would like to dedicate this book with this conference to all the little girls who once feared they would never be heard. All little girls who suffered shame, rejection, bullying, insecurities, and they felt they just did not quite fit in, a bit like our guest, Anwen. Yes? All the young women who have suffered violence, domestic abuse, discrimination, been misunderstood, and not quite being able to speak up. I want to dedicate this book and this conference to the young boys who struggle to find their place, to know who they are, and to figure out what being a real man is all about, because they did not have a daddy who showed them that, did not have parents like Ans and Dave. I'd like to dedicate this book to all the disabled, all the nerds, all the people who are displaced in one way or another, right? Displaced geographically, displaced by ideals, displaced by religious affiliation, displaced by sexual orientation, displaced by limiting capabilities, displaced by not thinking, feeling, acting, and being what the world calls normal, right? I would like to dedicate the conference and the book to the incredible potpourri of people, nations, creeds, cultures, cognitions, and ways of being that is the fabric of which the Welsh landscape is comprised. And I'll jump down to the very end. But I think I'll say this back. I'm going to read this bit because people don't really understand this bit. Yes, I jumped over it the last time. Wales is now my home and has been my home since 2006. But most importantly, is the place that I became acutely aware of the importance of deliberate diversity. That's a fact. It is also the place that I came face to face with unconscious bias, discrimination, and racism. But it is also the place where I found true acceptance and also the place where I found no closed doors for a very long time. Wales is a place I realized that being different was actually an advantage. And you might ask, what are you saying, Bern? You are contradicting yourself. It may sound like a contradiction, but this is my truth and my experience is not unique. Moreover, it highlights that in a world where you can find hate, separation, discrimination, and bias, in that same world, you can find acceptance, unconditional love, and togetherness. And that's what we're going for. This is our Wales. This is my home. This is your home. And together we will make our world, not the world, our world, a better place. Thank you so much, David and Anwen. Thank you, all of you who are here listening. Please share. Please do it on replay. Share with others. And let's come out and let's be a part of the change. Don't go anywhere, guys. And see you all next time.
Bye.
All right.